What is good? It is your boy Pablo Gray, and we are back with another reaction video. And what I want to say is bear with me because this video is long as fuck. 14 minutes, 33 seconds. So I'm going to try to get through this as fast as possible. But this is coming from Sky News Australia. The title of this clip is China Sees the West as an enemy that must be overcome. So I just saw this shit on trending for YouTube, so here we are. Before we get into the video, you like my reaction videos, you find them informative, entertaining, or just adding value to your life, period, smash the subscribe button, like, comment, share. I really do appreciate it. Thank you. But let's get into it.
Is Colonel Richard Kemp, a commanding officer who served in Afghanistan. He's an expert on the Middle East and a fierce critic of political correctness in the armed forces. Richard Kemp, welcome back to Outsiders. How are you, mate?
It's a great pleasure to be here with you, even at this hour of the morning. I'm very well indeed, and I hope you are too.
We are. It's very good of you to stay up so late in lockdown there. You wrote a terrific piece this week comparing the coronavirus to 9/11. In what way, Richard?
Let me stop it right there. Listen, man, I'm gonna have to stop it like every 30 seconds. I've been trying to figure out this copyright shit. And as far as I know, you stop it every 30 seconds and get past it. So I'm gonna have to do it every 30 seconds. I might not say something every 30 seconds, but I'm gonna have to stop it just for a little bit. Maybe a second or two. But first thing I want to say, this is Australia, and it makes me wonder is, technically, I feel like they're in the same hemisphere as China, and they might be considered the East. Could be wrong, but if they are in the Eastern Hemisphere, then they obviously are paying attention to what they are seeing going on in their hemisphere and ours. Let's just put that out there, as you can see. But let's get back to it.
Well, I think the point I was making was that 9/11 was a sort of turning point in our understanding in our war against global jihadists. Up until that point, Al-Qaeda had been at war with us. They'd been attacking the West. They'd been fighting against us in various different ways, but we had not recognized it. It took 9/11 for the West to actually come to its senses and fight back. And I think the same is true of the situation with China.
All right, I guess so, but we all know 9/11 was an inside job. Let's be real. Jet fuel does not burn steel beams.
China has never stopped its Cold War against the West, despite the rapprochement that was established by the Americans with President Nixon and so on. They continue to see the West, in particular the United States of America, as an enemy to be overcome. We, however, stopped fighting. And I think the coronavirus and what we're seeing now about China, the way it's suppressed information about coronavirus, the way that it's tried to manipulate the messaging on coronavirus, all of these things. People, I think, now are finally waking up to the reality that we have to do something about China. We have to find a way of fighting back against this brutal communist power that's doing everything it can to essentially supplant the United States as the most powerful country in the world.
Rita?
Well, China does use its economic might to influence and intimidate nations, but
Okay, I want to pause it there because that's exactly what I was about to say. As you can see, he said Cold War, and Cold Wars just mean it ain't getting hot with firepower. They doing it in other ways that is really behind the scenes, and they doing it economically. They are one of the biggest economies on the planet, if not the biggest, and they're trying to compete with us. And if they have economical dominance over us, that's really all they need to conquer us as a nation. They don't have to do it with firepower. They know it, and I think that's what she's about to talk about.
I'm interested in some of their more softer approaches that they take, these Confucius centers that are supposed to be cultural and learning centers that are throughout the West. They spend a lot of resources on these Confucius centers. Can you tell us what the actual goal is and what do they do?
One of the most insidious elements of China's war campaign. And, let's not forget that the Chinese Communist Party, I don't believe have any intention of fighting a proper war against us, a war involving combat. They
I just said that.
Tend to do it all through influence, through data manipulation, through control of the internet, and various similar measures. And one of the most important measures they have is what you mentioned, the Confucius institutions. They've set these up in universities and high schools in some cases throughout the West.
I'm gonna just say I don't know what the fuck a Confucian institution is. I'm guessing it has to do with the teachings of Confucianism. I believe that it involves not fighting. I could be wrong, but that's what I believe. That's what it is.
West, I think there's something like 50 over here in the UK, for example, and many more in the US. And the idea really is to use those institutions to brainwash, to spread propaganda, Chinese communist propaganda to the West, to students, and teach them the way that the Chinese Communist Party want them to see China. They fund it, largely fund it themselves from China. They spent billions of dollars providing the funding for these Confucius institutions.
So I'm guessing they're using the teachings of Confucianism to influence those with a hidden agenda of the Communist Party. That's what it sounds like.
They also force, as best they can, they force universities to censor information, particularly about Taiwan, Tibet, Tiananmen Square, Hong Kong, all of these things that are sensitive political issues for China. And then on top of that, they use Confucius institutions as a means of espionage. As we all know, the Chinese Communist Party have decided that every single Chinese citizen, both inside and outside China, is a...
And this is what I was saying. This is the shit I was pointing out in my Drain the Swamp segments, that through the 1,000 Talents program, they scout out Chinese Americans and get them to come back to their homeland in China and use the teachings and everything they learned from here to help further their country.
As an espionage agent, is a potential agent for the Chinese government, and they exploit that as best they possibly can, often through these Confucius institutions. I'm very pleased to say that I saw only recently in the media that Sweden, of all countries, has finally closed down every single Confucius institution in its country.
James.
Colonel Kemp, first of all, I want to compliment you on having the nicest background of any of our Skype interviewees we've had on the show ever since this began.
I'm going to say shout out to Sweden. They putting a stop to that shit early.
But secondly, I want to ask you, just be a bit speculative here. The big difference between the Islamist Al-Qaeda threat and the rivalry of the Chinese Communist Party is Al-Qaeda was essentially nihilist and the Chinese Communist Party is essentially deeply materialist. Now, if this whole mishandling of coronavirus winds up seeing the Chinese goal, and Xi Jinping's very explicit about this with his 2 centuries anniversaries that he's aiming at, if this
in a moment from our sponsors
gets in the way of Chinese prosperity, will there be potentially blowback within China, among the princeling class, among the very wealthy in China against his rule? Will there be
an idea? Let's do it like that. Make this go a little faster.
Or is Xi going to become even more concentrated in power as a result of this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't in any way attempt to compare really the 2 threats from China and from international jihad, or indeed from the other, perhaps the other greatest enemy to the Western world at the moment, which is Iran. They have a very different way of looking at things. I think in terms of China's response to what's going on, they have developed, often using data control, the internet, etc. They've developed.
Man, if y'all seen my Drain the Swamp segment, China has in the last decade or two, they have been heavily investing in artificial intelligence, strong AI and weak AI. They have invested billions, and a lot of your taxpayer dollars have gone to help fund that shit. Through organizations such as the Bill Gates Foundation, the World Health Organization, and the CDC.
Develop perhaps the greatest control of any people, their own people, in any modern country, and they're known to be the world's leading executioner. They kill more people in their country per head than any other country does. They have a ruthless oppression.
And y'all don't think they not about population control? Like they wasn't the well-known country that only allowed one child per family?
Which I think there are some people who suggest that the regime isn't as stable as we might think, but I disagree with that. I think the regime is very stable. And their oppression doesn't just apply to the people at home. It also applies to Chinese people, as well as non-Chinese people in some cases, overseas, who they are determined to influence. I think your country, Australia, I always like to boast also that I consider it my country.
It is indeed.
I'm quarter Australian. You have about 1 million Chinese, I think, living there. Now, the Chinese government will act in any way it possibly can to make use of those individuals for its propaganda purposes, for espionage.
And that's what I was talking about. And they probably got all types of programs set. Programs that are either the 1,000 Talents program or things related to it, or like the Confucius institutions.
Purposes. And one of the ways they do it, not the only way, one of the ways they do it is to put the fear of God into them. Many of them have families back home in China, probably all of them, most of them do. And they know that if they don't do what they're supposed to do, then their families back home will suffer, even possibly disappear. So I think their control over their home population, as well as Chinese living overseas, is something that most of us who live in Western democracies find very hard to actually understand.
I mean, I think, Richard, the Chinese would, of course, say that this is complete nonsense, that they're very, caring, benevolent dictatorship, if you like.
Yeah, quit with the bullshit. We know that's not true.
But I certainly know, for example, that there are many Australian Chinese who are certainly very wary still of the Chinese government, and they love the fact they came to Australia for its freedoms and love those freedoms. And the last thing they want to see is any kind of diminishing of those freedoms. But let's look at to how much, I want to ask you, Richard, how much do you think what we've seen with the coronavirus is, it's the old theory, conspiracy or stuff up? We saw there was an article that came out, I think the Daily Mail had it, showing some stock photos of the Wuhan lab, the virology lab that we've heard about in Wuhan, taken back in 2018, and those photos show a kind of...
Why did they have pictures in 2018? That's the real question.
Pretty ramshackle refrigeration outfit where over 1,000 viruses are being kept, and some wag said, "Oh, look, I've seen better seals on my own beer fridge." To what extent is the escape of the coronavirus, was it in any way deliberate, or was it them the Chinese desperately trying to manage a disaster, or was it just completely bad management and slack standards, do you think?
Let's hear this.
Well, I think that I'm erring more towards the latter, bad management, slack standards. I don't think any of us have got any real knowledge about precisely how this originated, but we can all make guesses based on our own knowledge and assessment. And I know for sure that our national intelligence services are working around the clock to establish exactly what did happen over this case. It's important we do understand it as best we can. But I mean, certainly from my perspective, the most persuasive theory that I've heard is that this virus originated as an artificially created virus originating in the Wuhan virology laboratory, and they use animals to experiment on in these laboratories, and one or more members of staff of the Wuhan laboratory illicitly, not supposed to, illegally, took some of these animals and sold them in the local markets, which is obviously an ongoing thing that they do, and that was the way that it got out and spread. Now, I don't have any conclusive proof about that, but I think it sounds highly likely. It's exactly what.
So even that, what he just said, is just a theory. He doesn't have any proof. It's just a theory.
Somebody in the Wuhan virology laboratory would do if they needed a bit of extra cash and thought they'd get away with it.
Rita.
Goodness me, it's pretty grim that 4 or 5 months on, we still don't know the actual origins of this disease. And perhaps if we had the WHO having a bit more power and a bit more kowtowing to China, that could tell us precisely where it came from. But I'm also interested in what you think about particularly Chinese investment in Western nations. In Australia, there's an ongoing debate with China.
Yeah, let's hear this shit. Them Western investments where they buying up all the motherfucking land and property. And niggas can't buy shit. And by niggas, I mean just anybody, not black people in particular, just anybody.
Chinese interests buying up large tracts of land, buying up businesses. Is that something we should be concerned about, or is that commercial operations, capitalism, and you let it go ahead?
It's, I think they call it capitalism with a Chinese twist or something of that sort, which means it isn't capitalism at all. But I mean, in your case, in Australia's case, I think you've got a particular problem because, as I understand it, China is your number one, your top trading partner, and at the same time is, as I suggest, is the enemy of your greatest ally, the United States of America. So that puts you in a very, very difficult position when if it comes to America wanting China, wanting Australia.
You heard him. You heard him. Y'all better stop fucking with them. They don't believe the same shit you believe in. Stop fucking with them. Or limit it. Limit how hard you fuck with these people.
Australia
And by these people, I mean the Chinese Communist Party.
Join any operations or any action to contain China, then that leaves Australia in a tough position. But I certainly think we need to be seriously concerned about the economic influence that China's developing. President Trump in America recognized that and has at least begun action against it. I think the rest of us in the West certainly should do what we can as well. But it's...
Y'all heard this man. This man is in England and he's agreeing with Trump. And I'm pretty sure England don't fuck with Trump like that. Let's be real. The whole world really don't fuck with Trump like that. But this man, he seen that Trump recognized this shit and called him out.
We're so deeply entangled with China. I know Australia is particularly, but so is European countries, deeply entangled, almost to the point of dependency. Vast amounts of investment by China in Western countries, and of course a huge amount of Western money in China. So it's in many ways a two-way street. And China, as you know, is attempting to develop and extend this influence through its Belt and Road Initiative, covering 5 continents, which is intended to effectively bring as much international trade as it can into the control of China. And China's investment, China's money, and it's in the same way as, for example, China's the second greatest exporter of arms in the world, second to the US. But those arms exports are not really primarily intended to gain revenue. Of course, they do gain revenue. It's all about control, and that also applies to China's investment and the terms in which China allows Western countries to invest in.
If they give out arms and then they stop giving it to you, and they're the only people that give you arms, you're going to be shit out of luck, especially when they pull up with those same arms that you used to have and they aiming them at you. Take a second to think about that. Countries in Africa.
In China.
Very quickly, James, last question.
Very quickly, I just want to ask about anti-Semitism in the Wuhan virus. We've been seeing some moves that now somehow the Jews are being blamed for the coronavirus, and that in the Middle East we've seen posters that have been used to weaponize the coronavirus against Israel. Can you just give us a very quick
It's just funny this shit is happening, and I'm not saying that the Jews are off the hook because they got some explaining to do about a lot of shit. But regardless, that's not what we're here about. We're here about how this virus has been used to, how can I say, to push certain agendas, especially against certain people. You see it, it's the Africans in China, the Jews in the Middle East, Chinese people in other countries, I believe, but you see what the fuck is happening. People are now have a reason to discriminate.
beat on that?
Well, unfortunately, I
don't even care. We're gonna end the video right there. Alright, this is a long ass video, so I'm not gonna make this long. But yeah, bro, I've been saying this for a long time. China has been seen as an enemy. Just because they do business with us doesn't mean shit. Yeah, they have a plan. The plan is to take over economically through this Cold War, and looks like right now they're succeeding, but it's about to come to a stop. At least that's what I'm seeing, and it looks like that's where it's going. Let's hope that's true. But yeah, I think that's it for the video. You like what I'm doing here, smash the subscribe button, like, comment, subscribe, and share this. I really do appreciate it, man. Yeah.